Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Maaike and today I have my book review of the month of May. So it's the second Tuesday in June right now and I thought it was time to talk to you about the books I read in May. I do have to say that I feel that some of these books I read such a long time ago, it seems, that I'm like, oh, what were they about again when I pulled them off my shelves? I don't know, does it happen to you as well or is it just me? I did read 6 books in total, which means 3 I read physically and the other 3 I listened to as an audiobook. Now the first audiobook I listened to was Roxane Gay's Bad Feminist, and I heard lots of great things about this collection of essays about like feminism and all that kind of stuff. I just felt that there were a couple of topics that I really like vibed with and I was like, yeah, this is a really good point. But there were also some aspects that I felt like really, like there's an entire chapter where she talks about being part of a Scrabble club that I was like, what? So to me, the book as a whole didn't really vibe. I just didn't really get it. There were some topics that I thought were very interesting. Her take on like feminism and race and like sexuality. I thought that was really cool. But there were just too many chapters in the book and it was like each chapter was like a topic. So there were some chapters I was like, yeah, and they were over like this. And then there were some chapters that I felt like, yeah, I know, I get it, let's move on. So I also felt that because I read it as an audiobook, the narrator of this book just wasn't the best. It was a bit slow, it was a bit boring to listen to as well at times. So it had nothing to do with how it was written, it was definitely also part of how it was narrated. So that was a bit of a shame. But yeah, I think I gave it 2 stars in the end because I wasn't feeling it very well. Now, straight after that, I actually found out that there's a new audiobook version out of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, read by Eddie Redmayne as Newt Scamander. So I loved it. And it's not just an audiobook. It's very short, of course, because the book is very short, but it even has like sound effects. So when they talk about dragons, you hear like roaring and fire breathing in the background. So it's really well done. It's more like a play almost, like a radio play rather than an audiobook. So that was really cool. And I love everything related to Harry Potter, wizards. So you knew this was going to be 5 stars the minute I said Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So there we go. And last but not least, I listened to Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantell. And this is one of those books that I see everywhere whenever I go into a bookstore. It's like, winner of this prize, winner of that prize. It's like a very hyped up book and it's a pretty big book. It's a historical fiction novel about the life of Thomas Cromwell in like the court of Henry VIII and how he sort of gets into power and all that stuff. And I like historical fiction, I like it, but sometimes it can be a bit slow paced. So I felt like instead of reading it, let's listen to it. And so that's what I did. I started listening to it, and the narrator of this is one of the actors from Downton Abbey, so it was very enjoyable to read, but it was quite a short book. I picked it from a list, and it came up as a recommendation on my audiobook app, and I was like, yeah, it sounds good, and I could follow the story quite well, and it worked all right. And then I finished it, and was like, wait, it kind of feels unfinished. So I started looking into the book a little bit more, and then I found out that the first book is like a first book in a 3-part series. So I was like, oh wait, I was expecting the whole book to be like the life of Thomas Cromwell, but it wasn't. There are 2 more parts apparently to the story, and I wasn't intrigued enough to carry on with the story, I have to say. I enjoyed it, all of the scheming and the politics. I liked that, but I didn't really like most of the characters. And then I also found out, as I started looking a little bit into it, that I had listened to the abridged version, which means that some of the side characters may have been cut. So if I were to continue with the second book, it might be that I missed parts from the first book that are then in the second book. So I don't think it would be wise to continue the series anyway. And another critique that a lot of people seem to have on this book is the way the story is told. Apparently it's a very sort of like third-person narrative, but even if it's told from the perspective of the main character. So it's kind of confusing sometimes because it talks about he going somewhere or he saying something, but then it's like from the perspective of the main character. So that's a bit strange sometimes. Because I listened to the audiobook version, the narrator had different voices for different characters. So to me, I had no issue telling apart different characters for that reason, because it was always clear who was talking to whom and what was being said by which character because of the audiobook. So I do recommend that if you want to listen to it or read this book, that you do go for the audiobook, because it might be a little bit easier to read in that sense. But yeah, Wolfhall by Hilary Mantell, I quite enjoyed it. Let me see how many. I ended up giving it 2 stars because of all the issues that I ended up running into, and not really going like, oh, now I would have to read even more. It was well done, it was well written, I think, but I wasn't completely into the story, I'd say, so that's why it was a 2-star read for me. Moving on to physical books then, and that would be the completion of the Queen of the Tearling series. I read The Invasion of the Tearling, which is the 2nd book, and The Fate of the Tearling, the 3rd book in this series, and I do have to say that as I feel about a lot of series, I felt the 1st book was the best one. It definitely took a darker turn in books 2 and 3, that where I was like, yup, now I get why this is in the adult section. The 1st book still felt a little bit YA to me, but the 2nd and 3rd book definitely have like some graphic scenes in there that make it a little bit more up there, you could say. There's a little bit of time travel going on in this, and I do have to say that that was what made it less enjoyable for me. You got different perspectives from like a time before the Tearling, which was like very close, but like a more dystopian version of our world today. And I don't know why, it kind of took me out of the flow of the story, I felt. And as the story progressed, you got more and more of these perspectives to really see what was going on, and it does have a function in the story in the end. I just felt that because so much was then not being told about the action going on in the Tearling itself, that I kind of felt like, oh yeah, now we go back to this. And I felt that in the end, the story was a bit lacking in certain points. I do have to say that, no, this is the furthest long ago since I read this, so I do have to say that I felt like Kelsey was taking certain decisions, and where in the 1st book I could sort of get down with some of those decisions, in the 2nd and 3rd book it just seemed a bit strange what she ended up doing, and the way she sort of changed as a character, and some of the other characters that were in the book as well. I was like, it was almost as if they were like put in there just for the sake of trying to do something interesting with the story, but it didn't end up really working out very well, in my opinion. So I can't really give you too much of a plot line of these two, because I would be giving away what the entire story is about, but I just didn't really like the changing of perspectives. I usually don't, I have to say. I don't like multi-perspective books most of the time, and as this series progresses, you get more and more perspectives, which was a bit of a shame. And then, last but not least, Lethal White by Robert Galbraith. And this is probably why I also feel a little bit more negative about this, because this was brilliant! I loved every single minute of this book. I couldn't put it down. It's a pretty big one, especially for a detective. Like, detective mystery novels are usually not that long, and this one is like a good, like, chunky 650 pages. I do have to say that there's a bit of a plot device I feel that is used in the middle of this book to sort of propel the story into like another plot, which I felt, was that really absolutely necessary? I'm not too sure. I do feel that that kind of dragged the story along a little bit too much, but in the end it all turned out to be pretty cool, and the way how everything comes together. This is really one of those mystery novels where at the end you want to go back and read it again and see if you could find all of the clues to see who did it, because now you know. So this was really, really great. So if you don't know what this series is about, this is about Cormoran Strike, who is a veteran from Afghanistan, where he lost his legs, and he's now a private detective in London, and together with his partner in crime, most certainly Robin, who's his assistant slash secretary. I think she starts out as a secretary and then start solving cases together with him. And they go on this journey whenever they have a client to figure out what's going on. So it starts with blackmail, there's a murder. Need I say more? This is very enjoyable. This is 5 stars. So those were all of the books that I read in May. I definitely started a couple of other books, but I just didn't have the time to finish them before the month was out. So I know I will be finishing a couple of other books very, very shortly, which I'm very excited about. So that being said, I have more book content coming your way, of course, again next month. And this is it for this month, so I really hope you enjoyed it. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more by me. I mainly make beauty videos, but I also love talking about books. So that's why you sometimes get these videos too. And even though they don't get a lot of views, I'm still going to continue doing them. Yay! Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for your time. I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!